Okay, we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Victoria Damiani. I am from the Billigence team. I'm a senior account manager here at Billigence, based in Melbourne, Australia. Today, we're going to be presenting you with the virtual user group. We are going to be exploring Collibra's AI governance and updated UI. During our session today, we do have the microphones turned off. However, you are welcome to ask any questions you have in the chat function, which you should find at the top of your screen at any point in time in our presentation. Please feel welcome to throw any questions you have in there, and we will seek to answer them either during the demonstration as we go or towards the end of the session today. If there are any questions we don't get to, please don't fear. We will answer those after the fact if we don't have time to answer all the questions that come through. Thanks again for joining us today. We're going to spend about an hour today walking you through some of the fun things we've been up to between Billigence and Collibra, excuse me. We'll go through some introductions. We'll talk about the Data Citizens update. Data Citizens is the large conference that happens every year, the annual conference for Collibra. Then we will have a wonderful demonstration of all of the new features for Collibra and some Q&A towards the end. Wonderful. Just going to kick off with a quick introduction of Billigence for any of you who are new to Billigence. So Billigence is a boutique data consultancy. We are obsessed with data. To be fair, we're all data enthusiasts, and we are always seeking to help our clients drive business value from their data by designing and tailoring and implementing effective approaches for BI and data governance. We are a global organization with a wonderful APAC representation, and we are here to support you locally, but keeping a really global perspective on anything that we are recommending for our clients. Now, we have 4 key practices in our organization in Billigence. Those include the cloud data architecture, data governance and quality, which we'll obviously be focusing on today, data science, machine learning, and the ever popular AI topic, and data insights as well. And I think one of the nice things about Billigence and working with Billigence, especially with regards to your data governance programs, is that we are coming to you with that broad perspective of how the governance piece fits into that larger data strategy in your organizations. And we will always bring that perspective to any project that we work on with you and your organization. This year, we were very excited to be awarded the Regional Systems Integrator of the Year for EMEA and APAC for Collibra and a gold partnership level with Collibra. One of the questions we've had as of late has been to kind of talk about the partnership between Collibra and Billigence, especially in this region. And the summary of that is that your Billigence team, so people like myself and Zach and Graham, who are on the call today, can be a wonderful conduit for you through to Collibra technology and implementations and anything in between that you need for clients in this region. We can be your first point of call for all of those needs. Now, in addition to our Collibra partnership, we are partnering with what we view as best of breed technologies across all of those 4 key practice areas. So that architecture and the analytics side and everything like that. And so what you'll see when we come into an organization, we are tech agnostic. So if you've got a certain tech stack in place and you're very happy with it, we will come to you and work with the technology that you have. But when asked, we are recommending what we view as best of breed technology, which of course includes Collibra as just really the gold standard in terms of modern and robust data governance programs. I'll kick over to my colleague Graham to take us through the next few slides.
Excuse me. Thank you, Victoria. And it's great to be here. I can see many of you in the attendees already know me. We've already worked together previously, or perhaps we met in the previous forum where this was held in the Billigence office. So thank you for coming along again today. So just by way of an introduction to myself, I'm Graham Pearman. I'm the head of delivery for Asia Pacific. So my responsibility sits across all of those practice areas that Victoria showed us previously. I'm also an avid data enthusiast, and I've been working on various Collibra projects and implementations, maturity assessments, a whole raft really of end-to-end involvement with Collibra over the past 4 to 5 years with Billigence. I just wanted to start by giving really an introduction to what we do at Billigence from a Collibra practice perspective and how this has kind of been building over the years. We're proud to say that we have Collibra expertise and SMEs across now 6 countries globally. And we work on a wide range of accounts, whether those are greenfield or helping clients with existing implementations, really get the most out of Collibra from a return on investment perspective. So we're really keen to drive adoption, usability, and support our clients to get the very most out of their data cataloging solution. We also like to work, outside of the kind of core auspices of Collibra as well, so helping with things like data governance frameworks, data quality frameworks, and all of the kind of business focused things that need to be done in order to make Collibra sing in the middle. And yeah, as you can see, lots of us over 30 now and growing, and we're continually improving our knowledge and understanding of Collibra as a product, its business value, and yeah, we've got lots of ranges as well. I think we're over 10 now and growing. Thanks, Victoria. So I was privileged to attend the Data Citizens conference back in, I must admit, I'm struggling to remember when it was. I think it was in early April. Time seems to have flown since then. It was a fantastic opportunity to really kind of understand and get a sneak peek of all these great things that are happening with Collibra this year. Extremely well run conference. I still have very fond memories from the keynote speaker, who was the creative director from Disney. Very energetic, and that kind of really set the scene for the whole conference in terms of how people worked together, how people wanted to kind of understand each other's problems, and it was just a great place to be, and kind of soaking up all that energy and enthusiasm that Collibra have about their product for this year. Zach is obviously going to take you through all of the new features, some of which you had already seen, will be seeing arriving in your dev environments already. So I won't go too much into those details, but I would like to just explore some of the themes and the key areas coming out of the conference. So one of the key themes that I would call out and encourage everyone here to think about themselves is this idea of networking with one another. So the case study that we were given, we had representatives of existing Collibra customers representing IKEA, Shell, and Heineken. So 3 quite disparate industries. But what had happened is these 3 people were in the same room, and they were just having a chat about their particular issues, problems, challenges, things that they wanted to be able to achieve. And just independently, they formed a collective, essentially a network, and they shared their problems, they identified solutions together, they spoke about best practice, things that were working for them, things that weren't, pitfalls in terms of things they'd approached and hadn't quite played out. And that's carried on going for several years now. And so independently, they have these kind of ability to peer review their objectives in terms of what they want to achieve from a governance and a data management perspective in their own quite disparate areas, but they share very common problems and solutions towards that. So that's something we really wanted to take back from Orlando and bring back here to Asia Pacific and encourage everyone here to think about how they can do that as well. So networking with one another, finding out more about your respective challenges and how you're resolving those. The other key thing is obviously it wouldn't be a conference in 2024 without mentioning AI. So the key thing from AI, and why I find Collibra's approach to be very refreshing, is that they're approaching this from two perspectives. So one perspective is, how can AI be used in Collibra to speed up all of those kind of cumbersome tasks, make things more efficient, make processes more efficient, do things like describing columns for you much quicker, being able to think about classification of your data, and some other key features as well, which Zach is going to run through. The other perspective is, as organizations who are now kind of burgeoning into the space of AI, wanting to use things like chatbots, wanting to kind of expand their usage of AI technologies, how are you, as an organization, are you going to govern that process? So a key component which Zach is going to show you is the AI governance module, and that is really there as a way for organizations to begin to think about, okay, well, we have a new AI project, who's going to own that, what's it going to do, what data does it relate to, what regulations do we need to think about, all things essentially that sit within your Collibra environment, and are able to now kind of pull all that together with a kind of risk assessment around that, and much more transparency and kind of thought around how that's going to be managed from a governance perspective. So I will leave it there, and I will hand over to Zach, who's going to get into the technical detail. But thank you again for all coming on. Great to see you in the attendees list.
Fantastic. Thanks, Graham. Great introduction as always, and very eager to kind of get into the meat of this presentation, which is seeing all of the cool new features that Collibra are bringing out, which we do genuinely think will add a lot of value and get you thinking about what you're doing in your Collibra environment, and how some of these particular items are likely to not necessarily fix, but aid in certain areas where you have maybe shortcomings or asks from particular business units when it comes to means to interact with Collibra. So I am going to steal the show and start sharing my screen, where I have this presentation set up as well. So we're going to be doing a little bit of jumping backwards and forwards from presentation back into the platform itself. So let me dive into present mode and we'll start talking through some of these. So I think the first thing that we should really talk about is what Collibra have coined the platform called Arbor, and it's essentially a complete rewrite of the Collibra UI. And it's a full modernization and giving you flexibility to kind of brand the platform as you see fit. It doesn't have to be a Collibra platform where you're having to jump through hoops to bring in HTML code or anything complex to change the look and feel. You've got full control over that. There's the introduction of a few smaller AI modules as well, so helping you with some of the functionality when it comes to doing product descriptions. So you'll see here in the bottom right, we do have a bit of a release schedule for the new UI. In fact, it launched this week. So because it's a good time for us to do this presentation, we thought we'd time it around the time that that Arbor actually launched. So you should find that in your dev environments, this is turned on by default. You will see the new UI, and in your live environments, it is available to be enabled. And I'll show you how you can go about doing that and how to turn it off if you are not quite ready for it either. But as I mentioned, creating focus, allowing you to make kind of changes to the look and feel of that UI is what we're going to take you through today. We'll also be taking you through tailored asset pages. So to define what a tailored asset page is, if you think about the look and feel of Collibra today, when you log in and you go to, say, a business description or a column or a table, that's very rigid in its structure, and Collibra has dictated to this point what the look and feel of those asset pages has been. A lot of feedback came in, which was to give you more control over the sections and the kind of characteristics that go into those sections to be a little bit more relevant to your business. So things like splitting out those relationships into their own section, having a high level section of details or asset characteristics related to, say, one function or business unit. You've got full control over that, and we'll show you how you can change those as well. The new UI, so being able to make changes, we'll go through what that looks like. So adding in your own logos, changing the color scheme to kind of match your business function, and got a little bit ahead of myself there, but yes, this is the new AI feature, these descriptions. So currently based off of physical assets, and by that I mean columns, tables, and data sets. So you can use a little bit of OpenAI style suggestions to help you speed up the metadata creation process. So very much in its first iteration, very likely to be expanded to other asset types as users start to use this and provide feedback to their kind of customer success managers through Collibra as well. So let's take a little look at this. So what are some of these new features actually look like? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the Collibra demo environment here, and immediately this is a landing page that is completely different to what you've seen before. Modern UI, nice rounded corners. You'll find that your little Rubik's Cube from the top right corner has moved over to the left. So in the right is purely administrative information, or profile information, I should say. So my profile information, a little bit of documentation linking off to other sites, but how you typically interact with your platforms all in one place. You're likely to either navigate through your organizational structure using the compass as you do today, look at all of these different dashboards that exist within the platform. So I can go and take a look at, some example dashboards, which I'm sure some of you have seen through demonstrations in the past. All of these have been updated to kind of match this new UI as well. So there shouldn't be any changes needed here. Maybe a little bit of reformatting potentially I've seen, but for all intents and purposes, this is a seamless switchover. And then your Rubik's Cube as well, which gives you access to all of your different features within the platform. So again, clicking through all of these, looking at the catalog, looking at the glossary administrative view, all that consistent look and feel throughout the platform, but just a fresh lick of paint. So taking a quick look at the tailored asset pages. So if I go into something like a data set here within the platform, or click through from the data set to the underlying table, like I would through a typical catalog kind of search function, I can still see where this is stored within the platform. I still have some information along the top, which I'm familiar with. So there is sample data if you have that enabled, and the diagrammatic view, while used to load in this little window, Collibra's taken the decision to pop this out into its entire UI. As feedback was, when people are looking for lineage, they want to engage exclusively in that lineage experience. So just using more real estate for some of those screen real estate for some of those more complex lineage diagrams, which are constantly getting bigger and bigger as users adopt more of the Collibra functionality. Clicking in the top right takes me straight back to where I left. But you'll see here, if I scroll down a little bit, all of this has started to be broken out into individual sections. So in this case, I have details. I can collapse this section, which I can't do today if that is of not interest to me. The same goes for the likes of columns. So if I'm not looking at column information, maybe I'm looking at relationship information. And one thing which you can now do is completely turn off any mandatory or, well, both mandatory and optional, in fact, characteristics which are blank. So if I just want to toggle this off and show purely the populated metadata, I can do that. Where before, if you have, say, I need to, I have a descriptive example, I think is the one which comes out of the box in a lot of assets. That would just show up as an empty box, and there was no real way to hide that, but it was something that you wanted to encourage your users to actually fill out. So you can have a little bit more control over tidying up the assets on the pages, again, through the lens of as additional characteristics come in, or you're gathering or ingesting more metadata onto your underlying assets, you want to give people different methods of kind of filtering what's relevant to them. So how do I go about changing the look and feel of these asset pages? Well, that is, of course, the tailored asset page function. So that actually lives within your settings. So inside of your operating model, which maybe is only accessible to some of your administrators today, I can go in and change some of these asset types. So of course, Collibra has the out-of-the-box operating model. I'm sure there's people on the call who have worked with Billigence or within their own organizations to make slight adjustments to that model to suit their particular data governance strategy. But if I look for something like a table, which I was looking at before, I can see that a table is a data asset. It's a structure. I can click into this table. And under global assignment, I'm going to get a breakdown of all of those different characteristics which can actually exist on a table. So that description, like you saw before, there is no mandatory setting. So the minimum amount of descriptions is 0, and the maximum is 1. And again, I can see the relationships that can exist in here. There is a cost, all of these different attributes that can exist. And they all fall into different sections, or would be in the current UI would just be a list from top to bottom in order. So if I click edit layout, this is actually going to take me into this custom asset page view, where I can now go in and start creating my own sections on my assets relevant to either a business structure domain or a particular use case that I want to provide this information. So you can see here I've added another section that contains the description, and I can scroll down and pick from that predefined list of accepted attributes. I won't go into details about creating new attributes today, but anything that's not on show, I can kind of click on here and move these around. I can represent relationships. I can add in URL information. I can move all of this around. So a lot more granular control over what goes into each part of the platform. And of course, I can create new sections as well if I want to add those in. So just splitting out those characteristics into different sections. There is the concept now of a at a glance page, which I should have touched on, but I'll go back to in just a moment. And you can show which roles are important for you to show on that at a glance page. So again, when you're showing off your data owners, or you might be using data stewards or business stewards as kind of your overall authority on a given asset, you can show that information in that at a glance page as well. So while I won't save this, I can click preview, which is going to show me an example of what this is going to look like. I've got columns, new sections. I have hidden information, so there's nothing to go in this section. Again, you've got a lot of control over what you want that to look like. So if I'll delete this draft and close back out of here and go back to my table view, I'll show you on the right this at a glance page, which is popped up as well. So I don't have a business steward assigned currently, therefore it's blank, and I set that to be mandatory, but I can explore that, and that's what is going to show up on that tailored asset page. So a quick overview there of this whole new kind of UI structure. Almost everything else remains very similar, so there's no significant changes to the underlying operating model. You've still got full history of what's happened to a table. You have a quality tab if you're making use of quality metrics. Techlin remains the same as well, but diagram pops out into that new view. Oh, AI descriptions, of course. And the last piece of course, is this AI description component. So when I am looking at the column section here within the platform, I can see that there is a description button. So this can be done on a column, on a data set, or on a table. What we'll do is we'll show this kind of being done at bulk scale. So if I do this on a table, it will run this for every underlying column, but it's just going to write a simple description using some of the context from the metadata that's stored within there. So looking at the title, looking at the table that this is a part of, it's a part of the customer product sales table. It contains an Arabic description of a product. And the reason it's got a product is because there are product relationships to different models. So it does look at some of those relationships that exist to things like models or categories or PI classification tags that you have in there to provide you with a level of description. I can make them longer if possible. I can make them shorter if they're too long. And then I can go ahead and save some of these examples into the platform. Currently, it's manual. You can't generate everything and save them at scale. There is a little bit of apprehension that perhaps that will generate kind of debt if that's done at scale and it's not quite right, or the descriptions aren't representative. So we always currently want there to be a human as the ultimate authority to say, yes, commit that to my actual platform itself. Okay. So moving on then from
Zach, sorry, just before you move on from that, I did start a discussion in the Q&A around if anyone here is using the new UI, perhaps in their dev environment, they began to play with it. What are your initial thoughts? Are there any areas where you've struggled or not sure about things, or any questions you want to ask us about that? One question I would ask there, Zach, in terms of when you were editing the layout, can those layouts be scoped as well? So if you have a scoped implementation of Collibra, can the layouts be customized for each one of those scopes?
Good question.
Sorry,
I believe that is the case. So when you're defining asset types, or you're building a scope, and a scope, for those that don't know what a scope is essentially making a change from the default operating model and assigning different asset types, or assigning that to an organization structure. So a column might contain a description in the default scope. It might contain 2 descriptions in a, let's say, an IT scope, for example. So diving into that, we can definitely do that. So if I go into the asset type itself, I'll just pick a system, something nice and easy. So there are 2 scopes in here which have characteristics. So I can edit the layout within the global assignment, and if I go into the data privacy assignment, I can edit the layout in here as well. So essentially, I'm editing the layout per scope. So if you are using different views for different communities and domains, you can have different views across those different scopes. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good question.
And
haven't had that one yet.
Yeah, have you seen any particular impact from the new UI?
I think it's still a little bit too early to tell. The feedback from those customers that I've spoke to who are using it in the dev environment have all been very positive. They like the new UI, but the new UI, as you'll see, is a springboard for a lot of new features. They're only available in the new UI. So I think the excitement for the new UI is because things like AI governance and notebooks, which we'll get into in a moment, are the most exciting part. So positive. It's only been out for about 4 days officially, and we're still spreading awareness. But I think the features are definitely going to play a big role into the adoption of this new UI. Yes.
The only teething things I've seen, Zach, are some of the layouts in the dashboards. They seem to have gone a little bit array, and perhaps they're going to need a bit of tinkering in terms of that HTML code to bring them back into alignment. And the other one, I actually need to validate this, but I think it may have reset the languages back to US again, because I'm sure there's an environment that previously in dev was set to the DDMMYYY format, and it seems to have switched back again.
Interesting. I know there's been a lot of feedback through the beta channels and a lot of rapid fire bug fixing. So I'd like to think that that's resolved, but definitely something to take into consideration and check. It is straightforward to change your date format through the console in the back end, but yes, could be that a backup update's been done.
Maybe the last point to ask is if there are any customers on the call who aren't ready for this or don't want this in their dev environment, how would they go about reverting that?
Yeah, of course. So on my next tab, I'm in console, so my dev environment. So this you may or may not have ever seen, but it's called the console for your Collibra environment, and it's for turning on and turning off specific features that you have access to, restarting services, grabbing logs, etc. So under infrastructure, data governance center, and config, you can turn on and off certain features that you may not use, but you have access to. And under front end features, number 22 is the full front end experience. And it's just a little tick box. In fact, you don't even have to restart your environment for it to go away. You just need to do a kind of hard refresh on your browser So typically close the tab, reopen it. I usually give it 60 seconds or so for it to kick in the background, and that will switch it back to the old experience as well. And while we're here, that the same goes for data notebooks, which we'll get onto in just a moment. These aren't necessarily enabled by default, but again, you can come in here and explore and turn on certain features that you may not realize you have access to, and get them enabled within Collibra. Perfect. So in settings, of course, I should have mentioned that you can change the look and feel of your environment. Very simple changes that you can make, just logos, but full color settings as well. So if you want this to match your own branding, you can certainly come in here and do that too. For all of the hoverovers, all of the settings, the tabs, dark mode, light mode, etc., you can make changes to all of these assets as well, and play around with those. So not much more to say there, but go in and explore and play around in your dev environment until you make it look like every color of the rainbow, and then tune it back into something that kind of suits the look and feel of your organization.
Hi, Zach. Sorry, just one more question's coming from Sania, and she asked, with the new UI, there have been some problems in triggering workflows. The usual error seems so far as around the user not having permission to run the workflow. Could that have been to do with any changes in permissions in the back end?
Shouldn't have been. There are, doesn't mean there isn't. There are changes taking place in the back end when it comes to permissions and features that exist within Collibra. So potentially, I would just go in and check your users and groups settings and make sure that none of your resource permissions have tweaked. So if you've got a community manager or business steward, that inside of here, there is typically the ability to run workflows. I forget exactly where it is off the top of my head, workflow management in here. So make sure that this is ticked as well. The licensing is changing. So this is, you will have standard and read-only users today. Oops. So just make sure that that those are still ticked. But yeah, keep providing that feedback through Collibra support, and anything that is there will get fixed pretty quickly. I'm sure the next there'll be a lot of bug fixes now that this is out in the real world. Perfect. So moving on from the new UI, then we have a new feature, which is, of course, AI governance. So AI governance is a new framework built on top of the policy management and assessments management platform, which came out originally with the privacy module of Collibra. So privacy being the management of kind of your business processes and risks, as well as things like PI clarification, a new raft of asset types within Collibra. AI governance is built on top of that and provides you with some out-of-the-box frameworks for collecting information about any AI initiatives which are upcoming within your organization. So that's things like which models they're using, what's the business justification, have all of the risks been taken into consideration when it comes to things like bias or what type of data is being used by this model, making sure that you're logging kind of the inputs and outputs, so that, again, when we think to the future, when you're building out new AI governance models using outputs from what you're building today, you have full traceability back to how this was originally created. So jumping on board with AI governance and thinking about building governance around what essentially is kind of a black box. When you're using AI to generate insights and outcomes, you want to at least know how that's being generated or how that's being used by your different teams. So in version 1.0, you can ingest all of your AI models from Google Vertex and through your Databricks Unity catalog. That is extending out to other technologies over the year. But let's go in and have a little look at kind of what the outputs of that actually look like as well. So diving back into demo, there is a whole AI governance tab that exists here within Collibra as well, which is where you can look at the different stages of your governance projects within the platform. So there's two areas that you can store different asset types. So there are your AI use cases. So you can look at the back end where all of these have been stored, what status they're in, descriptions, etc. Create views as you would with any other asset. And there are your AI models. So there's here we've got a couple of vertex models, a score calculation model as well. So two new asset types that can be brought within Collibra through the lens of governance. And if I go in and take a look at our example one here, which is credit score calculation, we can start looking at what's actually stored against this asset type. So in here we have a little progress tracker. So again, a way to maybe store some of those epics that need to be delivered as part of your project management timelines for building out the steps of making this use case whole. So we can say that we're ingesting models. Have we applied the risks and safeguards? Have I had approval for my actual assessment form to start on this process? And I can click into some of these other assets as well. So I can see that somebody has made an assessment through the assessment register for a given AI use case. They've attached that to certain assets. They've added information, or they should have added information in here. But ultimately, these assessments are built and managed through the assessments management tool, which comes with AI governance. So in here, you're able to build out templates. Think of them as questionnaires that have decision points and are used to gather the contents to build out fully populated assets within Collibra. So if I go into the credit score calculation AI use case assessment, you can see here that this is one that's being created, and all of these different questions have been filled out by a user. So they can come into the assessments register, say, hey, look, I want to build a new data AI or governance framework. I want to tie that back to an asset that already exists. So if I go back to something like to a use case, so we'll just pick credit score calculation and conduct an assessment, it will give me a task to go out and start filling out these pre-built questionnaires. So of course you can build what these look like, build them into multiple pages, gather all of the relevant information to be tied back to those new sections that are built using the tailored asset model. So AI models, the checklist, what properties that you want to gather. Essentially, you're automating the process of building out those use case assets. So going back into governance, if I was to fill all of this out, you'd end up with a fully populated use case asset within Collibra. So I have all of the business context, who's the business sponsor, what models am I using, have I got them from third parties, are they internally, how have they been developed, what level of automation, where's the data stored, tying that all the way back into your catalog. So what systems and data sets or tables and columns are being used to train the model, what information is being inferred throughout the model, and does it have any outputs? So the idea is that during the model, it's going to be creating a full list of credit history in this scenario, and at the output, it's calculating credit scores through AI. Full legal AI compliance section. So again, when you're thinking about AI, compliance with appropriate data protection standards are one thing, but ethics standards as well are another, which is a point of concern for lots of clients that we talk to when it comes to the AI initiatives. So making sure that we've got legal sign off for building all of this. Am I training a chatbot using personal information? And can that chatbot then talk to the client or talk to the end user using information that perhaps it shouldn't know about them? And again, just building in some extra information in here. So rather than have to break out to the diagrammatic view, give you an overview as well. So again, just using tools that already exist within Collibra and providing you with some extra functionality to get that look and feel of managing AI use cases and understanding what models are being used within your platform. And that's it. That is AI governance.
Hey, Zach, just a few more questions coming in from Pushan and Sania. So Pushan asks, with the guided stewardship view, what improvements have been made in the diagram section for business assets? Are there?
I do have a little section on guided stewardship, or on the stewardship function, or a little bit later on.
Right.
I don't know how to answer that off the top of my head without going off on a complete tangent. Let me take that one offline and I'll come back to you on that one, just in the interest of time.
Yeah. And Sania is also asking, how do you get the sort by on attributes on the summary page?
How do you get what, sorry?
It says, how do you get sort by on the attributes within the summary page? Maybe Sania, you could expand on the question. So I did see you were looking at sort by section, just very, but this is in the AI governance module, right? Not in the
tailored asset page specifically.
Yeah, I think that will be question. Is there any way of sorting the attributes when you
in this view? No. So in kind of your asset view, you break down the individual sections. So you're building out these little, I've added way too much in here, but you're adding in these different sections. So relationship schemas, bad example because this just has overview, columns and comments. So it doesn't have a great deal of customization in here. So you can move these up and down, but they are linear based on how you build out those views.
But actually, just on that though, we would look in there. Say, for instance, because I know the default behavior is that if you have a list of, say, relationships, right, they'll always be sorted alphabetically. But then you can kind of customize that and then save the view. Is there any way to customize that in the actual view setting that we were just looking at in terms of your customized view customization? In the meta model layout section.
Yeah. Okay. Can you add any kind of filtering onto your asset model, so to speak? Good question.
Yeah, maybe one you don't need to answer as well, because Sania's just also asked, no, she means in the AI summary section that you were just showing on the screen. So I think, yeah, in the AI governance module, are there can you customize the attribute sorting?
Some you can and some you can't. So there is the concept of kind of mandatory fields which exist at the top. The same goes for catalog. Like on a table, you have to show columns. You can't change that. So actually changing these tabs down the left-hand side, you can, because these are tied into your kind of groups. So progress tracker is this progress tracker. Now for AI governance, some of these don't actually show up in tailored asset pages. So you can play around with these, but again, you can move these bits and pieces around. But yeah, anything more than that, just kind of leave a note and we'll do a follow-up on some of these with more specifics. Just we could go off on a real tangent here, and we've got a big audience.
Yep.
Excellent. So yeah, AI governance, great place to kind of get started on your journey of getting control over your assets within Collibra. The next is data notebooks. So data notebooks is really Collibra's second step after DQ into allowing you to probe deeper into your actual data within your platform and not just metadata. So it is current slide, I'll just make this a little bit bigger. So it allows you to write and store queries, notebooks, as you would in any other platform, and store them as assets within Collibra, but make them available for other users to see and visualize assets within the platform. So you can query your own data at source, in essence. So you can write your own queries and store them in notebooks. You can choose to materialize or not materialize the data based on permissions. And then there is a light visualization engine in here as well for building pie charts, bar graphs, etc. So at least you can represent some of those too. And you can, of course, publish these assets to a domain so that they are, one, governable, and two, shareable and findable through something like the data marketplace. So what does that look like? And I will just move this tab over because I need to get to this one. Always happens. So while I'm just logging back in there, one moment. There we are. Data notebooks, again, is another item that exists within the platform. So it's another tab in your Rubik's Cube. So inside of here, you do have your ability to publish or build your own private notebooks. And essentially what's happening is it's utilizing the edge connection that you have to your data sources to be able to query your data at source and start building out those visualizations. So in here, I can see I'm creating kind of titles, adding comments, creating little sections here like you would in like a Jupyter notebook, for example, but specifically for SQL and querying your data at source. I'm creating some SQL statements in here, and I am bringing back the raw data, placing that in a table and visualizing it as well. So one thing that's worth mentioning is there is an added layer of security in data notebooks on top of just your connection to Edge. So of course you are using Edge with privileged permissions to go and harvest and catalog metadata back into your Collibra solution. When it comes to data notebooks, you can utilize that same connection, but you can also have your users of Collibra put in their credentials for that data source when they're setting up a new connection or a new notebook, so that they have their own permission. So if I'm querying Snowflake, I don't want elevated permissions that Collibra has when I have access to specific tables. So you do get users to log in and authenticate as themselves. So just to go, hey, I don't want people to have a uniform access. And then that feeds into things like query histories. You know what people are searching for from an accountability standpoint within your platform. But these notebooks can be built and shared. Again, they are just stored as an asset. So there is an asset register for all of these as well, with notebook, the actual notebook itself being its own little section within Collibra. So you've got full control over data notebooks. But yes, if you have users who are saying, hey, I want to be able to query the data and understand it in more detail without having to specifically request access to it through Collibra, or at least have some little method of playing with it before gaining access to it, notebooks is certainly a good place to get started there as well.
Just to add to this feature, my advice here would be, because with Collibra, for me, this is a really good feature, very powerful. I think it's going to be well received by our customers. The concern for me though would be, here now Collibra is kind of breaching the void a bit from being a kind of metadata repository to giving users the ability to actually go and directly query your system. So the key thing here, if you are interested in this, think about from a change management perspective, really understanding what the security protocols are behind this, having a technical FAQ set up, which essentially manages all of the Q&A that you're going to generate around, is this secure, like what can I do, and essentially be able to kind of put those concerns to bed quite early before people begin to think now that Collibra is actually giving people the ability to access actual data. That would be our recommendation.
Yeah, and of course it is tied very deeply into the role-based access control. There are new line items for being able to gain access to this functionality and query on given communities and domains, etc. So that is controllable through like your Active Directory or single sign-on if you're using that to manage your user accounts. Perfect. All right. So it is available for 4 technologies at launch. So Snowflake, BigQuery, Databricks, and PostgreSQL. So the major kind of cloud vendors or the biggest platforms that we see on Collibra, with more and more coming out over the course of the year, and the technology is kind of being dictated through request. So if you have a certain technology that you want to be available through data notebooks, do provide feedback through your customer success channels or through the support channels, and they will make their way back to the data notebooks teams. So some quick fire ones then, as they're kind of getting a little bit smaller in scope. For those that are using both DIP and DQ, there is a extended bidirectional synchronization which has been deployed. So there has been a few different iterations of getting data or metadata from Collibra DQ back into Collibra itself. It started off as a very simple sync, and then the approach was, well, we'll push that sync down into Edge, so we'll synchronize your DQ results from Edge back into the cloud. And then, of course, not everybody has an Edge server, so that became a bit of a problem. So now it's gone back to a direct integration standpoint. So with a full there has been, I should say, some sweeping changes to the functionality and UI of Collibra DQ, and with that becomes the ability to perform integrations. So inside of Collibra specifically, if I have a look at this, I've just moved over to a table asset which has quality on here. So the same look and feel, if you're using that today, you will have the quality tab, you will have an overview. These can be broken out by dimension as well. This instance needs a little update at the moment to break those out. But if you're breaking these out by dimensions, they still exist. But there is another layer that's been added in here as well, which is the concept of a DQ job, where beforehand you would have all of these different rules, and a rule would have its underlying metric, the metric being the result of those rules. You can now group these into multiple jobs. So if you're executing data against a table from multiple different data sets, they'll all land back in Collibra, and you'll be able to see all of the rules bundled together in packages that are being executed against your data stores. So I can see the overall, result of a DQ job. It gets a score, whether it passed or failed, what table it's ran against, and specifically from Collibra DQ are these new rule types. So duplicates, outliers, patterns, records. So these are all of the AI rules or AR rules which exist as part of the Collibra DQ functionality, where custom rules is what used to come in before, or what's likely to be synchronized from other tools as well, where those are manually written SQL statements. And I, again, still click into these rules, see what is actually being executed if we have the predicate synchronized across here, which we don't, the overall DQ score. So this rule always passes. I can click into here and it will send me through to this DQ result, or this rule specifically in the tool. And again, I can see what column this is executed against. So this synchronization tool is bringing across all of your DQ resulting assets and building all of those relationships behind the scenes between all of these assets, all of the columns, all of the tables, etc. So you don't need to generate all of those. And again, like everything else, these can be built out into that diagrammatic view in Collibra as well. So I can click into these and see which rules are being executed against my different data stores if I wanted to do that as well. And we'll see if I'm on the right asset type to show this one off. But yeah, I can see that this job contains a rule, and this rule is being executed against this column, which rolls up to a table, so I can see the overall data quality metrics across my physical assets in Collibra as well.
Okay,
so not much more.
Zach, I was just going to ask, I know there's a few customers here today, I believe, who are using kind of custom integrations between a non-CDQ engine and Collibra. For those users, could you explain how the new API affects them, if at all, or if it's perfectly fine to remain on the existing integration that they have within the kind of more legacy-based visualization of this information?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is something to take note of as it stands today. Be it potentially an oversight by Collibra or a bug which has occurred as part of their development life cycle. Currently, the data quality tab, because there has been this new structure change, only shows for Collibra DQ customers today. So that is a known bug, and it's something that's actively being worked on. And you could go into the details of why, but behind the scenes, your DQ metrics get synchronized into your actual operating model, your metadata graph, while this new integration uses a different kind of store behind the scenes within the Collibra cloud, which is where it's drawing these metrics from. So just as a word of warning, if you are wanting to move to the UI, new UI, and have existing metrics coming in from custom connections, they will still exist, but they won't show in the new UI. So the current pen date for that fix is the next major release in July. That's the most I have at the moment. So just maybe if you're using that in excess, or that's a major part of your Collibra deployment, you might want to hold off just for now until that's ironed out. But everything else remains the same. On the current UI, that's all fine and dandy, and that will just start to show up here when that bug is fixed. So yeah, good point. That is a good point of contention there, Graham. Excellent. All right. Some smaller ones then. So we're kind of getting into the last little bit here. So for anyone that uses classification within Collibra, or a little bit of that guided stewardship functionality, which ties some of your classifications to your modeling layer, Collibra have added another type of asset which can be linked through the idea of a data class. So definitely easier to show than to explain. But if I go back into this demo environment and go onto a table, I can classify assets within this platform, within this table, and these assets can be these classifications come through the unified data classification platform, which a number of users might not know exist. So you can define your own classifications now within Collibra. Before it was a predefined list. You can write your own as regular expressions now, but what it's doing is profiling your underlying data and allowing you to add these classifications. And accepting these classifications is what kind of kicks off those guided stewardship workflows to stitch them back up to your diagrammatic approach, your diagrammatic views. But currently those relationships through stewardship are actually data assets or data attributes. So if I go into data classification, I can define these relationships as data categories or data attributes, which are logical models and are conceptual models. The Collibra has added an additional relationship called data concepts, which we typically see used for things like data classification standards for PI information. So what does that mean? What does it look like? So if I dive into the diagrammatic view for a given table, there is an example of that within here. So it just means that you can, if you're not using Collibra for storing logical or conceptual models, and you just want to be able to use classifications to tie Collibra, to tie things like policies and standards directly to your raw data, you can do that now as well. So if I bring up this particular view, what we will have is the ability to show what we have today. So again, we're building relationships between these data entities. So what is a customer? So our customer is a first name, education, address, email address, and we're building those relationships. So where do customer email addresses live? They live in raw, they live in refined, they live in consumption because of translations, and then I'm mapping them back up to business functions or kind of some of my business modeling. You have these data categories and concepts, so these green asset types. So if I expand out what is PI information, or what is a standard for restricted data, where I can, we've done categories, but concepts exist up here as well, I should say. So it's just giving you more flexibility to strip out this middle modeling layer. So if you're creating privacy standards and building concepts, etc., within Collibra, just map them straight down to data. Something nice and simple. So something to go and explore if you're using that. If you're not using that today, you're not likely to be using that anytime soon. But if you're wanting to look at the concept of guided stewardship and automatically building relationships between data concepts or modeling back down to your underlying layers, do talk to us. We do that quite a lot. And the last couple are, of course, super quick fire. So if I present from current slide. So this is just taking you through the actual steps itself. So you do the classification, that creates the data class, and then it automatically builds the relationship. And of course, that will show up as a category on your asset as well. So it will kind of flag them in. For those that are using Edge, Edge has always been a bit of a black box deployment. That is a bundle that you install on a given server. For those that don't know, you can now deploy it using quite a number of popular Kubernetes deployment methods as well. So if your kind of approach to cloud is to use shared resources, it is possible to kind of re-architect that onto some of the more common Kubernetes platforms as well. So do reach out. Part of that, if you don't already know, this did come out a couple of months ago, is the integration with Vault support. So if you're storing all of the credentials to your data stores within a Vault, within one of the major cloud vendors, CyberArk, HashiCorp, Edge, not just Kubernetes, but the existing Edge deployments as well, from I think 0224 onwards, to make sure that you keep that up to date. It does contain Vault information. So if you're wanting to move your security or your private keys off Edge and into your Vault, you can do that also. And then the last one, which I want to talk about, is a beta which is just launched, is Google Dataplex bidirectional metadata syncing. For those of you that are using something like the Unity catalog, of course, is a catalog for Databricks, and you can ingest all of that metadata back into Collibra. For other catalogs that exist out there as well. So when you're bringing in information from something like Athena or AWS, there are other catalogs that synchronize back into Collibra as that catalog of catalogs. Google Dataplex is Google's version of their major catalog function. It does have a lot more functionality in there. They're moving over things like access control policies and tags out from BigQuery into Dataplex. There's a lot going on there as well, but there's been work going on in the background to kind of create a sync between those two. So Google want to enrich their catalog using metadata stored within Collibra and tie that back into things like access control policies. And Collibra wants to be able to extract all of that metadata from the Dataplex catalog. And it will now also be able to surface technical lineage, which was only really available before on top of BigQuery. But as Google roll out more technical lineage functionality within Dataplex, that can be pulled out and surfaced back within Collibra as well. So no real more information on that, because the scope is currently BigQuery in the first instance. But if you think of other tools within Google that you would like to get lineage across, do talk to your Google rep about what Dataplex is going to be doing in that space from a lineage standpoint. Version 1 is very much table to table, and then they will be rolling out column-based lineage as time goes by. But definitely, if you're a big Google user, kind of just something to keep your eye on in what Google is doing with Dataplex and how that can be brought into Collibra to do a lot more of that cataloging automation as well. But I'm going to stop there. I know we've got a little bit more time, but I want to leave that for Q&A. And I know a number of users here will most likely have only had the hour to spend in this session as well. So before wrapping up, let me just open Q&A, as I know Graham had to go to another meeting and see what else is coming.
It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
I think, Sonia, we answered your question. Did you have any other questions about notebooks that we didn't cover off on?
And if there's anything that's particularly challenging, Sonia, or maybe out of scope for this session, we can always set up a short discussion to help with some of those problems that you're having and provide a conduit back to Collibra if needs be.
Yep. There's a question as to whether or not we will be sharing the recording as well. Yes, we will be sharing the recording, and I believe we'll be sharing the deck as well, if I'm not mistaken. So stay tuned. We'll be sending all of this information out. I will also say if there were any topics that you think are really relevant to your organization that you don't have implemented right now, please be sure to reach out to your account manager, myself, to Zach, to Graham, to to Pavel, who's on the call today, to any of your Billigence or Collibra representatives who you talk to on a regular basis. We are all very happy to have those conversations with you as well. Great.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks everybody for your time, and have a great day. Thanks for joining.